Welcome, traveler, to Old Worlds for Sleep, a quiet place where history and dreams intertwine. Here, the past is not dusty dates and forgotten names. It's alive. It breathes through firelight, parchment, whispers, and echoes of lives that once dared too much, loved too deeply, or asked the questions no one wanted answered. Tonight, we step into a story not of kings and knights, but of women whose voices were silenced, whose minds were feared, and whose legacy lingers in shadows and whispers. This is not the fairy tale version of history. It is the restless, untold version, one meant to lull you into sleep even as it stirs your imagination. So, get comfortable, let the day slip away, and allow yourself to drift back with us into the forgotten corners of the past, where every silence hides a story waiting to be heard. You are born into straw, into steam, into a world already suspicious of you. The midwife mutters a half-prayer, half-curse under her breath as she wraps your trembling body in linen that smells of iron and old blood. Outside, the wind howls through wooden shutters, a storm clawing at the village roofs. Inside, the air is heavy, but not with relief, not with joy. With something colder, disappointment. You are not a son. Your mother does not reach for you the way you imagined she might. Her eyes, glazed with exhaustion, flicker briefly over your face and then drift toward the rafters as if seeking forgiveness from somewhere beyond. She does not cry. She does not smile. She simply exhales as though burden has replaced breath. A daughter means no sword for the family, no inheritance for the land, no continuation of your father's name. A daughter means dowry, risk, another mouth to feed, and shame in a world that counts women not as blessings but as debts. From the first moments of your life, your worth is measured not in heartbeats but in the absence of one. You are not a boy. That is enough. The midwife swaddles you tightly, her hands rough from years of catching lives that arrive unwanted. She passes you back to your mother, who holds you as if you are both fragile and dangerous. Fragile because you might break her with the weight of your existence. Dangerous because daughters grow into women, and women attract judgment, whispers, suspicion. Your father enters only after the blood has been wiped from the floor. He does not ask to see you. He does not ask if your mother is alive or dead. He asks a single question: what is it? When told the truth, his face hardens, not with cruelty but with certainty. A daughter. Another liability. He turns away before you cry, before you even make a sound. In that silence, you learn your first lesson. Your existence must be quiet or it will be unwanted. Childhood does not offer reprieve. Your first toy is not a doll or a rattle, but a wooden spoon, thrust into your hand as soon as you can grip it. Your second toy is responsibility, heavier than your small bones should carry. By the age of 5, you are stirring porridge over flames that spit at your hands. By 6, you move silently through rooms, trained to anticipate what men will need before they grunt it aloud. No one praises you for cleverness. Cleverness is not a virtue for girls. Obedience is. Quiet service is. You are taught to fold your words away like scraps of cloth, hidden in corners where no one will trip over them. Your place is not to speak, not to question, but to remain invisible, present only through the absence of mistakes. Yet even in these earliest years, your mind betrays you. It wanders. It notices. It clings to contradictions like burrs on cloth. You see the way the priest's lips curl when your mother kneels too slowly. You watch your father's face tighten when you ask why your brother receives answers to his questions while you are met with silence. You begin to understand that silence is not simply expectation. It is survival. One night, you ask why the moon sometimes vanishes. Your aunt drops a bowl. The room freezes. Her eyes bore into you with fear disguised as anger. The devil likes curious girls, she hisses. Questions lead to sin, and sin leads to flames. The bowl lies shattered between you, the first physical reminder of how fragile the line is between curiosity and danger. You do not ask again, at least not aloud. But the questions do not die. They stack inside you, one atop the other, like dry wood waiting for a spark. You are told stories of Eve, the first sinner, the woman who listened to the serpent, who wanted to know too much, who doomed humanity with her hunger for truth. You are warned that intelligence in a girl is not a blessing but a curse, a temptation that will draw the devil to her side. You are told ignorance is holy. Yet you cannot help but notice. If ignorance is sacred, why did God place the tree in the garden at all? You keep the question buried but alive. Your world is ruled by men in robes who claim to speak for God, men who decide what is sacred, what is shameful, what deserves punishment. They say your soul is precious, but your body is a snare. They say obedience will save you, but curiosity will condemn you. They say women are to serve, not to think. And yet, already in the quiet corners of your mind, you resist. You learn to walk without swinging your hips, to smile without showing teeth, to fold yourself into as little space as possible. In conversation, in rooms, even in your own skin. You are training not just in how to serve, but in how to disappear. And still, your mind continues to sharpen in the shadows. You are not a sorceress. You are not a queen. You are not a legend. You're only a girl. But already that is enough to terrify them. Because they know. Even before you do. They know what you are. And worse, they know what you could become. Backhand index pointing right day law part 1, 800 chew. By the time you can walk without stumbling, you already know the rhythm of servitude. Your small hands smell of smoke and broth, your knees bruised from scrubbing floors that will be dirty again by dusk. Childhood does not belong to girls like you. It is bartered away for chores, silenced under the weight of obedience. The men in your family measure your value in silence and service. Your brother is allowed to roam the fields, climb trees, chase the horizon. You are tethered to the hearth, to the bucket, to the never-ending cycle of labor that neither begins nor ends, only continues. When he returns with dirt under his nails, he is praised for strength. When you return with burns on your palms from lifting the pot too early, you are scolded for clumsiness. Obedience becomes your currency. Every nod, every lowered gaze, every word you do not say is a small coin of survival. You are praised not for ideas but for anticipation. A good daughter knows what her father needs before he asks. A clever girl does not show cleverness, she shows restraint. But even restraint is noticed. The way you linger on a question too long, the way your eyes follow patterns others ignore, the way you tilt your head when someone lies. These are betrayals of thought, and thought in a girl is dangerous. You feel their stares when you forget to mask it. You feel the long silences that smother your curiosity before it can bloom. The world has a script for you. At 5 you stir the porridge. At 6 you carry water. At 7 you learn to mend torn linen. At 8 you are told not to laugh too loudly, not to walk too boldly, not to speak unless spoken to. Every year removes another piece of you and replaces it with duty. Childhood shrinks until it becomes something you barely remember. Still, your mind refuses to dim. While your hands scrub, your thoughts wander. You notice how your father's voice shifts when he speaks to men in public compared to how he commands your mother in private. You note the contradiction between what the priest preaches and what he practices. You hear whispers, always whispers, of women gone missing, women who asked too many questions or knew too much. The lesson is always the same. Obedience keeps you alive. Your first punishments are not blows but silences. The look on your father's face when you dare to interrupt, the sharp hush from your mother when you ask why. Disappointment cuts sharper than a slap. You begin to swallow your questions before they reach your lips, letting them rot inside your chest. But questions once born do not die. They accumulate like stones in the lining of your stomach. You grow heavy with them though no one sees. By the time you are 9, you have perfected invisibility. You move like shadow, silent enough to hear things not meant for your ears. You learn that men's truths are fragile things, easily cracked by questions, so you stop asking aloud. You whisper your curiosities to goats in the yard, to stars in the night sky, to the crackling fire. You speak them where no one listens, but they grow sharper all the same. The adults tell you that Eve's mistake was wanting to know. They tell you obedience is holy, silence is divine. They tell you suffering is a woman's gift to the world. You nod. You agree. But inside you wonder, if God feared women's questions, why give them minds at all? No one answers. You learn to play the role expected of you. You bow when they pray, you cross yourself when they scowl, you smile when they joke about clever wives being curses. And because you perform so well, they stop watching. They believe the silence has tamed you. They do not see the girl who listens harder than anyone, who memorizes contradictions, who learns the patterns of hypocrisy like constellations in the sky. This is the true weight of obedience. Not that it silences you, but that it forces you to split in two. There is the outside you, the bowed head, the soft voice, the obedient daughter. And there is the inside you, the one who records, remembers, resists. The one who notices everything and says nothing. At night, you lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling beams. You trace shapes in the wood grain like letters you cannot read, stories you are forbidden to write. You imagine yourself speaking aloud, asking the questions that churn in your stomach. You imagine the sound of your voice filling a room without being shushed into silence. It is only a dream, but it is enough to keep you alive. The world believes obedience has buried you. They do not see the truth. Obedience has only sharpened you. Because silence is not the absence of thought. It is the forge where thought becomes steel. And one day that steel will cut. It begins, as most dangerous things do, with something small. A question spoken without calculation, without understanding the price. You are 9, maybe 10, and the night sky has pulled you outside, away from the smothering silence of the hearth. The moon is swollen and luminous, clouds trailing across it like torn veils. You tilt your head, squint, and ask aloud, too loud, why the moon sometimes grows fat, sometimes disappears. Your aunt freezes. The bowl she was carrying slips from her hands and shatters against the stone floor. The silence that follows is louder than the crack. Her eyes burn into you, wide and frightened, not because of what you said, but because you said it at all. Curiosity, she hisses, her voice trembling with something between fear and fury, is the devil's tongue. You blink, confused. It was only a question. A question any boy could ask without consequence. A question your brother once asked and was answered with laughter, with a simple explanation about phases and shadows. But from your lips, it is something else. A threat, disdain, a proof of corruption. The room grows heavy. Your mother refuses to meet your eyes. Your father's hand tightens on his cup. You try to apologize, but the words stumble in your throat. You are sent to bed without supper, and as you lie in the dark, your stomach empty, you begin to realize something more dangerous than hunger has entered your life. Questions are not free. Not for you. The next day, whispers cling to you like smoke. Your aunt mutters prayers under her breath whenever you pass. The village children look at you with new suspicion. One boy spits near your feet and says you'll be burned like the witches in the old stories. You try to laugh it off, but the sound trembles. That night, your mother sits on the edge of your straw mattress. She does not stroke your hair. She does not smile. She only warns you, voice low and urgent. A girl who asks too much will not live long. She does not say it with cruelty. She says it with dread, as if remembering others who once asked. And you begin to remember too. The herbalist whose door was smashed when a child died of fever. The widow who knew the stars better than the priest and vanished one winter night. The stories you were told to forget now resurface, each one marked by the same thread. Women who dared to know, punished for the sin of noticing. The message is clear. Curiosity is not wisdom. It is temptation. Knowledge is not light. It is fire, and you will burn for touching it. So you practice silence more carefully. You swallow questions until they lodge in your throat like stones. You nod when told, kneel when commanded, smile when required. But inside, the questions remain, multiplying in secret. Why are women forbidden to learn letters if God's word is sacred? Why do priests speak of sin with such hunger in their eyes? Why does obedience seem holy only when it benefits men? You cannot voice them. Not now. But you can carry them. And so you do. One evening, as you fetch water, you catch sight of your reflection in the well. The moon above ripples on the surface beside your face, fractured and shimmering. You whisper the question again, why does it change, why does it vanish? But softer this time, so no one hears but the water itself. The well does not answer. Yet somehow the act of asking, even in secret, feels like defiance. You learn quickly that curiosity must wear disguises. A question hidden as a prayer. A thought wrapped in silence. An observation tucked into memory and left to grow in the dark. Because if you cannot stop your mind from wondering, you must teach it to survive. And so you become two girls again. The one they see, bowed and obedient, and the one they cannot, restless and relentless. A girl with a mind like flint, striking sparks where no one else dares to look. You do not know it yet, but this is the first rebellion. Not shouting, not running, not breaking rules, but asking quietly in the dark. Whispering questions to a world that has forbidden you to speak. A rebellion born not in fire, but in curiosity. It happens by accident, as most awakenings do. You are sent to sweep the church steps, your broom rough and splintered, your back aching from hours of scrubbing floors. The priest's books are carried past you, stacked high in the arms of a novice boy too careless to notice one slipping free. It tumbles into the dust at your feet. He does not see. He does not stop. He keeps walking, unaware he has dropped a treasure. You stand frozen, broom in hand, staring at it as though it were alive. The cover is worn, the leather cracked and flaking. You reach for it, fingers trembling, heart pounding so loud you fear someone will hear. You should leave it. You should look away. But your hunger is stronger than your fear. You pick it up. The spine groans as you open it, and there, lines of ink, tiny soldiers marching across yellowed parchment. Letters. Words. You cannot read them fully, not yet, but the shapes whisper to you, familiar from the scraps you've glimpsed in your brother's lessons, from the sermons half understood in Latin. Here, in your hands, the forbidden has weight. It smells of dust, of ink, of something older than the men who guard it. You trace the letters with your fingertip, careful, reverent. They feel like seeds, small but alive, waiting to grow in the soil of your mind. And in that moment, you understand something you had not dared to name. Knowledge is not just power. Knowledge is oxygen. Without it, you have been suffocating. You press the book to your chest and hide it beneath your apron. You finish sweeping with trembling hands. You walk home as if carrying a flame that must not be seen, terrified the heat of it will burn through your skin and give you away. That night, beneath your thin blanket, you open it again. You hold it close to the candle, tracing each word until your eyes ache. You know some of them. Latin prayers you've heard the priest mutter, names of saints whispered over bread and wine. Others are mysteries. You sound them out, mouth forming strange syllables, the shapes heavy and beautiful. The more you read, the hungrier you become. Days pass. Every chance you can steal, you return to it. You begin to recognize patterns. The way endings repeat, the way words bend to fit rules you are only beginning to sense. You write them in dirt with a stick, erasing them quickly before anyone sees. You whisper them under your breath while hauling water, practicing until they slip more easily across your tongue. You know if they catch you, there will be no mercy. A girl with a book is a danger, a contagion. But the danger only sharpens your devotion. For the first time, you feel not like an empty vessel but like a vessel filling, brimming, overflowing. And then, one evening, your father notices your absence from the hearth. He asks where you have been. Your voice catches in your throat, but you force a lie about helping the neighbor salt meat. He grunts, accepts it, but you feel his eyes on you longer than usual. Suspicion lingers. You realize then that knowledge is not only oxygen, it is fire. And fire must be hidden or it will consume you. So you become cunning. You tear a single page from the book. Just one, a fragment, a corner of scripture. You hide it beneath the straw of your mattress. You study it in secret, memorizing the letters until they etch themselves behind your eyelids. You copy them onto scraps of wood, onto the back of your own skin with soot rubbed from the hearth. Every letter is a rebellion, every word a risk. And yet you cannot stop, because for the first time in your life you feel awake. It is not joy exactly. It is not safety. It is something sharper, stranger, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you could fall or fly. You fall asleep with the scrap pressed against your heart. You dream of pages upon pages, entire worlds bound in leather, waiting. And when you wake, you know, one scrap is not enough. The hunger has only begun. The page beneath your mattress becomes both a comfort and a curse. You touch it at night like a relic, like a secret heartbeat. It whispers to you, silent but insistent, reminding you of what exists beyond obedience. A world built of words. But scraps are not enough. Hunger once woken gnaws. You begin to listen harder, not to voices but to silences. The pauses between sermons, the mutters of boys in their lessons, the prayers repeated so often they reveal their patterns. You are piecing together a language with no teacher, crafting a skeleton of knowledge from shadows. Your brother is careless. He leaves chalk marks on slates, scribbles left behind after his lessons. You linger by the table after he runs out to play, tracing them with your fingertip. Letters, numbers, shapes that are more than shapes. You mouth them silently, repeating until your lips ache. When he laughs at you for humming to yourself, you smile back, never letting him know you were humming his lessons. At the market, you watch merchants with their ledgers, black marks across pages thick as bread loaves. You do not understand the sums, but you sense their power. The men who cannot read must trust those who can. Power is not in the grain sacks or the coins exchanged. Power is in the ink. So you practice. With soot, with sticks, with anything that will leave a mark. Your palms are blackened from secret scribbles and dirt, wiped away before footsteps can approach. You etch letters onto wood shavings, whisper sounds into the empty air. Each small success feels like a spark, invisible but alive. You are clever enough to know cleverness must be hidden. Too much eagerness, too many questions, and suspicion will bloom around you like mold. So you fold your curiosity into obedience. You bow deeper. You speak softer. You perform silence with the precision of a saint. And because of this, no one notices your eyes lingering too long on the priest's open book, or your lips shaping his words while he preaches. At night, you return to your scrap of parchment. Candlelight flickers, smoke stings your eyes, but you endure it, tracing every curve of ink until you can see it even with your eyes closed. You are building a secret world inside yourself, word by word, stitch by stitch. But shadows are not only your teachers, they are also your mirrors. You begin to notice how many women carry knowledge hidden in their silence. The midwife, muttering herbs under her breath as if they are prayers. Your mother, counting coins twice before handing them over, though she pretends to be illiterate. The old widow who stares at the stars longer than seems proper, whispering names that sound older than Latin. You realize then that women have always learned in shadows. That their survival depends not on ignorance but on disguise. That knowledge flows in secret, like underground water, nourishing roots while men claim the fruit. One evening, your brother brags that he has learned to read the Psalms. He waves the words in front of you, laughing, daring you to try. You glance at the page and, with trembling confidence, whisper one of the lines you have memorized from your scrap. His laughter dies. He frowns, confused, then angry. You're not supposed to know that. He runs to your father. Your heart pounds. You are certain this is the end, that your secret has burst into the open. But when your father questions you, you drop your eyes and say nothing. Silence is your shield. He assumes your brother was lying to make himself seem cleverer. Your father strikes him for insolence and the matter is dropped. That night, your brother glares at you, cheeks red from the slap. His silence is sharper than any words. You know he suspects. You know suspicion is the most dangerous thing of all. You hold your scrap tighter than ever. In the stillness, you make yourself a vow. If your knowledge must remain in shadows, so be it. You will learn there. You will grow there. You will carve a mind in silence until it gleams. Because ignorance is the chain they gave you. And knowledge, even hidden, even half-formed, even dangerous, is the only key you will ever hold. The first time you hear the word heresy, you are too young to understand it fully, but old enough to sense its weight. It hangs in the air like smoke, heavy and choking, clinging to the name of a woman you once knew. She was the widow who lived at the edge of the village, the one with soft hands that smelled of rosemary, the one who gave you bread when your father's temper left the house in silence. You remember the way she looked at you, not as a burden, not as a curse, but as a person. And then one day she was gone. The whispers came after. She had spoken too freely. She had corrected the priest about the harvest moon, something about tides, about shadows. She had known too much. The men called it heresy. The women lowered their voices and shook their heads. You listened, and though you did not understand the word, you understood the fear. Heresy. A word that does not need proof, only suspicion. A word that makes people vanish. From then on, you notice how easily the label is given. A girl who asks too often. A mother who heals with herbs instead of prayers. A wife who refuses her husband's command. They are not called curious or clever or strong. They are called dangerous. And dangerous women disappear. The word begins to follow you, even if only in shadows. The memory of your question about the moon lingers in your aunt's eyes. The silence of your brother when you spoke the psalm out loud. You feel it, the invisible cord tightening around your throat, warning you to stay quiet or be named. But knowledge is already in you. The scrap beneath your mattress, the words etched into your memory, the numbers you trace in dirt when no one watches, they make silence harder to bear. You begin to see the world not as it is preached, but as it is lived. You notice contradictions everywhere. The priest warns of greed but feasts until his belt strains. Your father prays for humility but strikes your mother when she speaks too boldly. Men call women fragile yet fear them enough to control every breath. These contradictions are fuel. They burn hotter than obedience. And yet, you know the cost. You remember the widow's empty cottage, her rosemary plants left to wither. You hear her name spoken less each day until she is erased entirely. That is what heresy does. It does not just kill the body, it kills the memory. So you teach yourself another art, concealment, not just of words but of thought. You bow deeper in mass. You lower your voice until it is a shadow of itself. You laugh at jokes that make no sense. You pretend not to see, not to know, not to think. And because you pretend so well, no one looks too closely. But inside, you begin to shape your questions differently. You do not ask aloud why the moon changes. You ask yourself why God would give a girl a mind if she was meant never to use it. You do not challenge the priest when he preaches. You memorize his words, compare them to the Psalms you have read, and note the places where they bend, where they contradict. Your silence becomes sharper than speech. And still the whispers come. Not directly, not openly, but you catch them like threads. Your aunt muttering that you notice too much. A neighbor remarking that your eyes are too quick, too sharp. Small things, but enough to remind you, suspicion never sleeps. One night, as you fetch water from the well, a girl your age approaches. Her face is pale, her lips cracked. She leans close and whispers, "They say the widow saw angels. They say she heard voices." Her eyes dart, her breath quick. Do you think it's true? You want to tell her angels or not, the widow knew things. That was enough. But you hear footsteps behind you and bite your tongue. You only shake your head, whispering back, "I don't know." It is a lie. You do know. You know the truth is less about angels and more about fear. And fear is enough to kill. That night, you lie awake, staring at the beams above your head, listening to the house breathe. You whisper the word to yourself, heresy, tasting its sharpness. You know now that it is not just a word. It is a weapon. One you must learn to dodge, deflect, and one day perhaps wield. Because if heresy means a woman who refuses to be silent, then you understand something dangerous. One day the word will belong to you. The first lesson of loss is not grief. It is silence. You learn this when another woman disappears. Not the widow this time, but a girl you once whispered with in the fields, plucking weeds and trading secrets too small to matter to anyone but yourselves. She was bold in a way you admired and feared, laughing too loudly, saying what others only thought. She asked once why bread cost more near Easter, her voice carrying across the market before anyone could hush her. The silence that followed was colder than any winter. 2 weeks later, she was gone. No one said her name. Not her parents, not her neighbors, not the priest. Her absence was rewritten as if she had never existed. That is the way of loss here. It does not leave graves, only gaps. The village swallows its missing whole, and the silence that follows is heavier than mourning. You watch your mother's face when the girl's absence is mentioned in whispers. There is no surprise, no protest. Only the tightness around her mouth, the way she presses her lips into a line as though holding back every word that might have been dangerous. That too is a lesson. Survival requires not just obedience, but forgetfulness. You try to forget. You try to scrub her memory away as you scrub the floors, but she lingers. In the laughter you hear in your dreams. In the echo of her question about bread. In the ache of your own silence. The second lesson of loss is fear. After she vanishes, you notice how the village shifts. Women keep their eyes lower. Men speak more sharply. The priest's sermons grow heavier with warnings of temptation, of Eve, of women who think too much. Each word is a reminder that knowledge itself is dangerous, and that danger will be punished. You feel the fear seep into you, a weight pressing down on your chest each time your mind dares to wander. But fear does not erase thought. It sharpens it. You begin to study carefully, not just letters and numbers, but people. You see how fear controls them, how it shapes their silences, their obedience. You begin to understand that fear is not just a reaction. It is a tool. One that men wield with precision. The third lesson of loss is inheritance. Each missing woman leaves behind more than absence. They leave behind fragments. Recipes whispered in kitchens. Herbs remembered in passing. Stories half told to children too young to understand. You gather these scraps like treasures, piecing together the knowledge no one dares to write. You memorize the names of herbs, the stories hidden in lullabies, the questions buried in riddles. Each fragment is a seed, and you plant them in your memory where no one can reach. Sometimes you wonder if the missing women meant for this to happen. If their silences were not only fear, but strategy. If they trusted that someone like you, would carry their unfinished thoughts forward. One night, as you sit by the fire, your aunt warns you again, girls who notice too much end badly. You nod, obedient, but inside, you think of your friend's question about bread. You think of the widow's rosemary, now withered. You think of the girl's laughter that still echoes when you close your eyes. and you realize something dangerous. The true lesson of loss is not silence or fear or even inheritance. The true lesson is memory, because as long as you remember them, they are not gone. As long as their questions live in you, their voices are not extinguished, and so you carry them. The bold girl who asked too loudly, the widow who looked at the stars, the mother who healed with herbs, each one etched into you like invisible ink. You do not speak their names aloud. That would be heresy. But in the quiet of your mind, you say them again and again, keeping them alive in the only place no man can touch. Loss teaches you grief. Loss teaches you fear. But most of all, loss teaches you the weight of inheritance. You are not just one girl now. You are many. And that makes you more dangerous than ever. By now, you understand that survival means concealment. You bow, you nod, you keep your eyes lowered, but inside your mind grows sharper than any blade. Intelligence in a girl is not called wisdom. It is called danger. And you are learning how dangerous you can be. It begins with noticing. You notice more than you should, more than you dare admit. You see the way the magistrate's son wears new boots even when the harvest fails. You hear the way the priest shifts his sermons depending on which nobleman sits in the front pew. You notice how men laugh at each other's mistakes but call a woman's error proof of weakness. Your eyes are weapons, though no one realizes it yet. You watch, and in watching, you see through the lies they tell to themselves and to each other. You start testing the edges of your intelligence in silence, counting the days between markets, measuring shadows to guess the time, predicting storms by the ache in your bones and the flight of birds. Each success fills you with a dangerous satisfaction. If anyone asks, you shrug and say you just guessed. You learn quickly that truth must wear the mask of accident. At home, you speak less but think more. You track the way your father's temper rises with drink, the way your mother hides coins in the hem of her dress, the way your brother brags of lessons he barely remembers. You realize you are smarter than him, smarter than many of them, but to say so would be a death sentence. So you swallow the truth and let it sharpen in secret. You find yourself drawn to the patterns of the natural world. The way the moon changes shape, the way water ripples around stones, the way crops fail not by chance but by rhythm. You cannot stop yourself from observing, from piecing together small truths that no one has ever spoken to you. You are building knowledge from fragments, a cathedral of thought rising quietly in your mind. And yet every step feels perilous, because intelligence, when glimpsed in a woman, becomes suspicion. It happens one afternoon when you correct your brother without meaning to. He is bragging that the priest said the earth does not move, that the sun and stars spin around it like servants around a lord. Without thinking, you mutter, but the shadows change when the seasons do. The words slip out like breath. Too late, you bite your tongue. Your brother stares. Your mother freezes. A silence stretches until it feels like the room itself is listening. Then your mother snaps, quick and sharp, "Don't speak foolishness." She shoves a bucket into your hands, orders you outside. You go, your face burning, heart pounding, fear flooding your veins. That night, your mother kneels beside your bed. She doesn't scold. She doesn't shout. She only whispers, "You must hide better. Do you understand?" Her eyes glisten in the candlelight. You nod, though you feel the truth pressing against your ribs, aching to escape. From that night forward, you learn to disguise your intelligence as silence, your thoughts as obedience. You train your face to stillness, your mouth to neutrality. You learn to speak questions only in your mind. But you also learn something else. Intelligence is not just noticing. It is surviving. You memorize what not to say, when not to speak, how to fold yourself into smaller shapes so no one suspects how large your mind has grown. You understand now that your survival depends on balance. Learning enough to feed the hunger inside you, but not so much that others notice the flame. And yet, even as you hide, you feel yourself changing. You are no longer just a girl obeying rules. You are a strategist. Every nod, every lowered gaze, every silence becomes a calculation. You are playing a game they don't even know exists. One day, as you carry water, you catch your reflection in the rippling surface. Your face is the same, young, obedient, bowed. But your eyes are different, sharper, older. A spark glints there, small but unextinguished. It frightens you. It excites you. It tells you something you cannot yet speak aloud. Your mind is not theirs to control. Not yet. Not ever. And though intelligence in a woman may be dangerous, you are beginning to wonder if danger is the only way to survive. The market is noisy, alive with the clatter of hooves, the cries of merchants, the smell of bread, manure, and smoke braided together into the air. To most, it is a place of barter and necessity. To you, it becomes a classroom. Your father takes you there because an extra pair of hands is useful, not because he thinks you belong among men counting coins. He trusts that you will stay silent, that you will keep your head down, that you will carry what he commands. And outwardly you do. But your eyes are busy, always searching, always recording. You notice the ledgers first. Leather-bound, ink-stained, carried under arms or laid flat on stalls beside sacks of grain. The merchants consult them more than they consult each other, flipping through pages as though truth itself lives in the scratches of ink. Coins clink and bread changes hands, but it is the ledgers that hold the true weight of power. At first, you can only stare at the symbols' meaningless scratches. But over time, patterns emerge. Marks repeat, some tall, some round, some sharp. You realize these are numbers as alive as the letters you have stolen in secret. You begin to see how they bind the world. One man sells 3 sacks of grain but writes 4. Another takes a coin from your father and marks it twice in his book. Your father doesn't notice, but you do. And in that moment, you understand. Power is not in the grain, not in the coins, not even in the loudness of a man's voice. Power is in the marks. Those who can write them rule over those who cannot. You do not speak. You never speak. But your silence is no longer submission. It is study. You begin to copy the numbers in dirt with the tip of your shoe when no one is watching. Circles, lines, slashes. You whisper them to yourself, memorizing their order, their rhythm. Slowly, you learn to count not only with your fingers but with your eyes. You can see now when a measure is short, when a coin is missing, when an account does not balance. Your father, proud of his bargaining, leaves the market boasting of his cleverness. You follow quietly, clutching the basket, knowing the truth he cannot see, that he has been cheated, that his ignorance is a cage. The next time you watch more carefully. You count the coins in your father's hand before he passes them over, and you count the goods he receives in return. Again, the numbers do not match. Again, he does not notice, but you do. At night, by candlelight, you scratch the shapes of numbers onto wood with a piece of charcoal, matching them to the memory of goods exchanged. You teach yourself addition and subtraction without ever naming them, guided only by instinct. Numbers fall into place like stones in a wall, solid and undeniable. Soon you are faster than your brother, who boasts of sums in his lessons but cannot see when a merchant cheats him. You realize something dangerous. Not only do you know more than he does, you know something he doesn't even know to look for. One afternoon at the market, your father hands over coins for salt. You glance at the ledger as the merchant scribbles. The mark is wrong. Too many strokes. Your heart hammers in your chest. Without thinking, you whisper, "That's not right." The merchant looks up sharply. Your father stares at you as though you've spoken in tongues. Silence crashes down around you. You drop your eyes, stammering, "I only meant..." The measure looked small. You bite your tongue before saying more. Your father grunts, annoyed, and drags you away. But the merchant watches you go, his eyes narrow, calculating. That night, your father mutters that girls should not speak at market, that clever tongues bring shame. You nod, obedient, though your mind churns with fury. Because you know now, with certainty, that numbers are not just marks. They are truth, and truth is power. And once you have seen power, it cannot be unseen. From then on, the market is not only a place of trade. It is a battlefield. Every ledger a weapon. Every mark a strategy. You walk among them, silent, unnoticed, but already learning to fight a war no one believes you capable of waging. You are no longer only hiding scraps of letters under your bed. You are hiding entire worlds inside your mind. And with each sum you memorize, each trick you expose in silence, you feel the bars of your cage bend. Just slightly, but enough to remind you that cages are not forever. It happens on a day when the air is sharp with frost, the kind that bites fingers and stiffens breath. Your brother has returned from lessons, puffed with pride, his slate tucked under his arm. He smirks at you, eager for an audience, eager to remind you of the gulf the world insists lies between you. "I learned a psalm today," he says, loud enough for your father to hear from the hearth. He scratches a crude line across the slate and reads it aloud, stumbling through the Latin with the clumsy certainty of a boy convinced of his own brilliance. You have seen this line before. Memorized it in the scrap hidden under your mattress, traced it until the shapes burned behind your eyelids. Without thinking, you mouth the words, quiet, almost a whisper. Too quiet for anyone else, but not too quiet for him. His eyes narrow. "You can't know that," he says, half accusing, half afraid. "You're pretending." The word cuts deeper than if he'd called you cursed. Pretending. As though your mind cannot hold truth, only trickery. As though intelligence, when it blooms in a girl, must be deceit. You open your mouth to defend yourself, then shut it again. Silence is safer. But he sees the flicker in your eyes. He knows. Later he corners you in the yard. His breath clouds in the cold as he hisses, "You're not supposed to know letters. You're not supposed to read." He spits the word like poison. "If you try to act clever, they'll burn you." You stare at him, your brother, the boy who once chased fireflies with you, who laughed when you both tumbled in mud. His face is different now, harder, sharper, carrying the weight of lessons that told him he was heir, he was master, and you were nothing. You realize then that boys are taught early to police not just the world, but you. He threatens to tell your father. That night, your stomach knots so tightly you can barely swallow supper. When your father finally looks at you, eyes narrow, you feel your brother's accusation burning like a brand. But your father only grunts, tired from the fields, and dismisses it as childish squabbling. You are spared for now. Your brother doesn't forget. He mocks you in small ways, muttering, which under his breath when no one else hears, calling you cursed when you notice things he misses. At first it stings, then it hardens you, because you begin to understand. Every woman who ever thought too much has been accused of pretending. Pretending to be clever. Pretending to be holy. Pretending to know. The accusation is the weapon, not the truth. So you become more careful. You laugh at his insults, you bow your head when he gloats, you let him believe he has cowed you. But inside you are already stronger. Because every time someone tries to silence you, they confirm what you already suspect. Your voice matters. You retreat further into secrecy. At night, you whisper words to yourself as if reciting prayers, careful not to move your lips when anyone might see. You carve numbers into wood with a pin, then burn the evidence in the hearth. You practice invisibility not just in your body but in your thoughts. And yet, there is one lesson you cannot unlearn. The sting of being accused, the taste of shame forced into your mouth for daring to know. It changes you. It teaches you that knowledge is never innocent. It is always suspect when carried in the wrong hands, or the wrong body. Weeks later, your brother forgets the psalm he boasted of. He stumbles through it at Mass, earning the priest's frown. Quietly, in your mind, you finish the words he forgets. You do not smile. You do not gloat. You only bow your head lower, hiding the satisfaction that pulses through you. Because you know the truth now. Your intelligence is not a game, not a pretense. It is real and it is yours. But the world will always call it pretending. And so, you resolve to become better at it, better at pretending to be ignorant while secretly growing sharper every day. The next time your brother mocks you, you do not flinch. You let him believe his words are daggers, though they bounce harmlessly against the armor you are building inside. Because you know something he does not. Daggers of insult cannot pierce what is hidden in silence. He calls you a pretender. You let him. Because you understand now, sometimes pretending is not a weakness. Sometimes it is survival. The church bells toll before dawn, their iron voices rolling across the village like thunder. You wake to the sound as you always do, pulling your shawl tight against the morning chill. The bells are not just a call to prayer. They are chains, invisible but heavy, reminding you that your time, your body, your very thoughts belong not to yourself but to God, or rather to the men who claim to speak for him. Mass is ritual, not revelation. You file in with the others, head bowed, steps careful, the air thick with incense that stings your throat. The stone walls echo with Latin, words you partly understand but are forbidden to question. The priest's voice rolls like smoke, heavy and monotonous, thick with certainty. He preaches of sin, of obedience, of Eve's mistake and the danger of women who stray from silence. His eyes sweep over the congregation, lingering just long enough on the women to remind you who the sermon is truly for. You kneel on the cold stone floor, your knees aching, your head lowered. You repeat the prayers as expected, the words dry on your tongue. To the others, it may seem like devotion, but to you it is survival, because you have begun to notice what the church hides. The sermons are not consistent. Sometimes the priest warns that women are vessels of temptation. Other times he insists they are sacred, holy in their submission. One week he praises poverty as a virtue. The next he accepts coin from wealthy men to bless their fields. You are too young to name it, but you recognize the pattern. Doctrine bends when power demands it. And still the people kneel. Still they obey. Because obedience is safer than doubt. You glance around during prayer just once, your lashes low enough to disguise it. You see women's lips moving without thought, reciting words they do not feel. You see men closing their eyes in exaggerated piety while sneaking glances at each other's wives. You see children mimicking what they do not understand, already learning the weight of ritual. The church grips not just the body but the mind. It tells you what to believe, how to speak, how to think. It tells you questions are dangerous, that doubt is sin, that silence is salvation. But you know now, from the widow, from the vanished girl, from your own hidden studies, that silence is not salvation. It is erasure. After Mass, the priest lingers near the door, blessing each family as they leave. His hand rests too long on your head when he murmurs words of protection. His eyes are sharp, probing, as though searching for the heresy that smolders behind your quiet gaze. You bow quickly, stepping aside before his touch can linger. Outside, your brother mocks you for walking too slowly. Your father scolds you for not bowing deeply enough. You accept the rebuke with lowered eyes, though inside your thoughts burn. How strange, you think, that the men who claim holiness wield it like a weapon, twisting it to serve themselves. That night, you sit by the hearth while your mother mends clothes. Your brother brags of his lessons, repeating lines of scripture as though they were coins he could trade for admiration. You listen silently, but your mind compares his words to the psalms you've memorized, noting the differences, the omissions. You are beginning to see the cracks in the church's grip, not in its power but in its truth. And once you see a crack, you cannot stop looking for more. You notice the way the priest condemns greed but eats meat even in Lent. The way he rails against lust but his eyes linger on young girls too long. The way he insists obedience is divine, but only when it comes from women. The contradictions pile up like stones, heavy but undeniable. Still you remain silent, because you know the danger of speaking. You have seen what happens to women who name what they see. But inside you begin to resist in your own way. Each prayer you recite becomes an act of translation, words you repeat outwardly while twisting them into questions inwardly. Each bow you make is not devotion but disguise. The church believes it grips you. In truth, you are slipping through its fingers, thought by thought, question by question. You look at the crucifix above the altar, the painted Christ hanging in eternal agony. His eyes are cast upward, his mouth frozen in silence. The priest tells you this is holiness, to suffer quietly, to obey without question. But you are beginning to wonder if even God listens differently than they claim. The story of Eve is the first story you are taught, and it follows you like a shadow. You hear it in sermons, in whispers, in the sharp warnings of women who have lived long enough to know its weight. Eve, the mother of all, the sinner of all. The one who reached for knowledge and was punished with pain. The story is not told as myth, not even as history. It is told as prophecy, a curse that you too must carry. You are told that because Eve reached for the fruit, you must bow your head. Because Eve questioned, you must never question. Because Eve hungered for truth, you must swallow silence. You kneel in Mass, the priest's voice rolling over the congregation. He says Eve's curiosity is the reason you bleed each month, the reason childbirth splits women open, the reason men rule. He says obedience is the path back to grace, and obedience means never repeating Eve's mistake, never wanting to know. But as you listen, you wonder, if knowledge was forbidden, why was it made so beautiful? If obedience was holy, why does it feel like suffocation? You do not dare voice the questions, but they bloom in you all the same, stubborn as weeds between stones. Your mother repeats the story at home, not with the priest's anger, but with weariness. She reminds you each time you falter, remember Eve. A woman's burden is to endure. She says it like a prayer, but it sounds more like surrender. Her voice carries the echo of generations who swallowed their questions until they disappeared. You promise yourself you will not disappear. One evening, as you help your mother grind herbs for broth, she tells you childbirth is both miracle and punishment. We bleed because of Eve. We suffer because of her. She does not look at you as she says it. Her hands move steadily, her eyes on the mortar. But you see the shadow in her face, the sorrow that says she never truly believed obedience could erase the curse. That night you dream of Eve. Not the painted temptress in the priest's books, but a woman standing barefoot in a meadow, holding the fruit not as sin but as gift. She does not look ashamed. She looks alive. When you wake, your heart pounds with something dangerous, admiration. You begin to see the story differently. Perhaps Eve was not weak but brave. Perhaps her hunger was not corruption but courage. Perhaps the curse is not that she reached for knowledge, but that men feared what she found. Still, you keep these thoughts locked in silence. The word heretic hovers like a shadow over every thought too bold, every idea too bright. You know better than to let the flame show, but inside it burns hotter each day. And slowly you begin to realize the cruelest part of the story. It is not just about Eve. It is about every woman who comes after her. It is about you. Because every time you ask why the moon changes, why the market cheats, why the priest contradicts himself, you are told you are Eve again. Sinful, disobedient, cursed. Every time you think too much, they remind you, this is what brought ruin. This is what must be punished. You carry that knowledge like a brand. But instead of breaking you, it hardens you. You understand now that the curse is not the fruit. The curse is the silence they demand in its place. You press your hand against your chest, feeling the rhythm of your heart, steady, defiant. You are Eve's daughter, yes, but not in the way they mean. You are not the shame they whisper. You are the hunger. You are the question. You are the refusal to bow. And though you know the price, though you have seen what happens to women who let their thoughts slip into the open air, you cannot help but carry it. Because Eve's curse is not a punishment at all, it is a legacy. The legacy of women who refuse to forget the taste of forbidden fruit. You wake one morning and everything is different. Not the sky, not the earth, not the rhythm of prayer or chores. Different in you. Your chest aches. Your hips feel foreign. Your blood comes slowly at first, then not. And suddenly you are no longer a child. You are a body to be measured, weighed, appraised. No one congratulates you. No one smiles. Your mother sighs, heavy and resigned. She says, "You're becoming a woman now." But it doesn't feel like becoming. It feels like erasing. The stairs begin. Your uncle's eyes linger too long when you bend to pick up a rag. The boys at the well nudge each other and laugh, but not like before. Their laughter is sharp now, heavy with things you don't yet have words for. Your father begins walking with you to the market again, not as care, but as surveillance. He calls it protection. Feels like ownership. Your body, once simply yours, is now public property. Every curve, every gesture, every movement cataloged. Your breasts are not yours. They are a scandal waiting to happen. Your hips are not yours. They are proof your womb works. Even your smile becomes a risk, an invitation you never intended. The rules change overnight. You are told to lower your gaze, to speak less, to dress more modestly. Your mother hisses warnings each morning, "Don't lead boys on." As if your very existence is a trap. As if the shape of your body is bait you set on purpose. You try to hide it. You bind your chest. You speak softly. You fold yourself into corners. But it doesn't matter. You could cover yourself in ashes and rags, and still they would say the devil walks in your shadow. Because it was never about modesty. It was never about virtue. It was always about control. And now your body is the battlefield. One afternoon your father comes home early. Your mother bakes bread without explanation. Your sister scrubs the table, though it is already clean. You stand still waiting. The knock comes heavy, deliberate. A suitor, twice your age. His beard is gray. His breath smells of onions and wine. He doesn't look at your face. He looks at your hands, your waist, your feet. He inspects you like livestock, like a goat to be traded. He speaks only to your father. The words are not love, not admiration, not promise. They are barter. Land, livestock, labor. You are not introduced. You are appraised. Later that night, your mother calls you into the other room. She doesn't ask how you feel. She doesn't ask if you're afraid. She says, "He has land. You'll eat." That is the blessing. That is the measure of your worth. 3 days later, the deal is struck. You are not asked to say yes. You are only asked to wear the dress. You try to smile. You try not to vomit. On your wedding night, he calls you girl. Even after the vows, even after the sheets, he calls it love. It isn't. It is purchase. Proof of ownership written not on parchment but on skin. Your body bleeds again, and again, until it doesn't. Then they call the midwife. They say you are blessed. You are not blessed. You are trapped. A vessel, a cradle, a function. The priest says this is holy, that pain in childbirth is Eve's curse, that suffering is sanctified when it silences women. You want to ask him why God gives men medicine for their wounds if pain is holy, but you swallow it, like everything else. Your body becomes a machine measured in cycles, pregnancies, obedience. Every month, every season, every year, your worth is counted in blood, in babies, in silence. And still, your mind burns behind your eyes. Still, you remember parchment. Still, you remember questions. Still, you wonder why your body's changes mean your voice must vanish. You realize the truth slowly, painfully. They are not afraid of your body. They are afraid of what it contains. A mind too sharp, a hunger too old, a memory of Eve. They cover your body, confine it, trade it, sanctify it, because it is the only way they know to control the fire inside. But no matter how much they weigh you, measure you, bleed you, or bind you, your body is not just a battlefield. It is a banner, a signal, a warning, and one day it will rise. The announcement comes not with music or laughter but with stale bread and boiled cabbage. Your father clears his throat and tells you your wedding is next month. The man's name is William, 33, a card owner. His first wife died in childbirth. You are not her, but you will be expected to be her replacement in every way, only quieter. Marriage, they say, is a blessing, a girl's purpose, her protection. What they mean is this: marriage silences her. On your wedding day, they lace you into a dress that doesn't fit. You haven't eaten properly in a week. Your stomach knots, your hands shake. Your mother pulls the bodice so tight that stars burst at the edge of your vision. Stand straight, she hisses. Don't fidget. Look grateful. You try. You really do. But when William lifts the veil and kisses you, dry lips, unblinking eyes, it doesn't feel like a promise. It feels like a contract signed with skin. That night he doesn't ask. He takes. He grunts. He rolls away. You stare at the ceiling, the wood beams above you blurred with tears you refuse to shed. The next morning he wants eggs, bread, and you again. And so it begins. Marriage is not a partnership. It is a performance. You smile when you don't want to. You nod when you disagree. You laugh when you want to scream. Every thought you have is weighed against the risk of his reaction. William likes his soup hot, his shirts clean, and his wife quiet. He reminds you of this often. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, once with the back of his hand. He doesn't hit hard, just enough to remind you where the line is. You apologize though you've done nothing wrong. It becomes a reflex, the safest word you know. One evening, you suggest a better way to balance the cart's load. He ignores you at first. When you persist, gently he snaps. Later he tells you that you embarrassed him in front of the blacksmith. You thought you were helping. You thought you were challenging. You learn fast. You stop offering suggestions. You stop asking questions. You stop speaking unless spoken to. You master the art of invisibility. You walk softly, breathe quietly, shrink your presence so small it feels like your skin is folding in on itself. The priest praises your obedience. Your neighbors nod approvingly. Your husband brags that you are a good wife because you don't argue. And all the while, inside you, the fire smolders. You write sometimes in secret. Just letters, just marks on scraps of parchment hidden beneath your mattress. Shapes that tether you to the memory of a self before William, before the contract. The first time he finds one, he holds it up like evidence. Trying to be better than me? He spits. What good is a clever wife if she can't keep her mouth shut? You apologize again. Not because you're sorry, but because it's the only word that keeps you safe. After that, you stop writing too. The fire turns inward. You become quiet even to yourself. And that is the most dangerous silence of all. Because William thinks obedience is victory. The priest thinks obedience is holiness. Your mother thinks obedience is survival. But none of them realize obedience is only ever borrowed. It is an act, a disguise, a thin veil draped over a storm. You wait, you watch, you learn. And in the quiet corners of your mind, you keep the questions alive. Because marriage, as they define it, is not the end of you. It is only the beginning of your disguise. And one day that disguise will slip. The kitchen becomes your kingdom, or so they say. But kingdoms have crowns, and you wear only calluses. They call it your domain, your sacred hearth, the fire that keeps the family alive. But no one tells you that fire also eats you alive, slowly, invisibly, until there is nothing left but ash under your nails. Your mornings start before the sun. You rise barefoot on damp stones, your breath visible in the cold air. You knead dough with aching arms, stir thin stews with a cracked spoon, rock a crying child with one foot while feeding flames with your hands. There is no praise, no applause for bread browned perfectly. No thanks for stew that warms bones after frost. There is only criticism when it goes wrong, too salty, too bland, too thin. Your husband says a woman's only job is to feed her family. The priest says suffering in silence is holy. Your neighbors say nothing at all, just glance at your apron, at your tired eyes, and nod knowingly. It is expected. It is endless. It is the cage they've named devotion. You hum sometimes to keep the silence from swallowing you whole. Not because you are happy, but because humming distracts you from thoughts too sharp, too dangerous. Because when you stop, your mind remembers books, words, questions, forbidden things. Once, you dreamed of waking to parchment, to knowledge, to conversation about stars and scripture. Now you wake to onions, to spilled milk, to cries in the night. Once, you dreamed of freedom. Now you dream of one uninterrupted night of sleep. You remind yourself, this is not life. It is survival. Still, the cage tightens. William complains the stew is bland. He slams his spoon down. You apologize, though you know the truth. The salt he sold for ale is gone, and no prayer can season the pot. He doesn't care. Your apology is not for truth. It is for peace. You begin to measure your days not in hours but in apologies. Each one a brick. Each one building the wall around your voice. But the mind cannot be starved forever. In secret, you scratch letters into wood with the dull edge of a knife. Just one at a time. A stolen mark. A memory of the power they tried to bury. You wipe it away before dawn, but you remember it. And for a moment, the kitchen feels less like a cage and more like a door. Sometimes you overhear things. The merchant's wife boasting her son is learning Latin. He is half your age, yet already shaping the world with words you are forbidden even to look at. The jealousy burns not because he knows, but because you know you could too, if only they let you. At night, when the house is still and William snores beside you, you think. You compose arguments in your head. You map constellations in memory. You imagine what it would be to live unchained, to be measured not by bread and broth, but by brilliance. And even though the cage is heavy, even though the bars are thick, even though each day feels like another link in the chain, your mind does not forget its wings. They say a good wife keeps her home warm. They do not see that she burns herself as fuel. But you see it, you feel it, and somewhere deep inside you decide, you will not let the fire kill you. You will learn to make it light your way. It begins not with fire, not with shackles, but with a sentence spoken too casually over bread. You are kneading dough, your hands sticky with flour, when you say it, I don't think God meant for us to be so afraid of him. It is not a rebellion. It is not even a challenge. Just a thought, soft as steam rising from the pot. But in your world, a thought in a woman's mouth is never just a thought. The room changes instantly. The other women glance down. One mutters something about the weather. Another remembers laundry left on the line. No one meets your eyes. By evening, 3 households have heard the story. By morning it has changed. You didn't wonder aloud. You mocked scripture. You didn't question fear. You questioned God himself. By noon, someone's cousin whispers that you've always been strange, that your bread rises too perfectly, as if charmed. By dusk, a neighbor murmurs that she saw your eyes glint sharp in candlelight, like flint catching flame. You are not accused of anything, yet. But gossip is a spark, and sparks spread. The priest lingers after Mass. His sermon winds tighter around Eve, temptation, the danger of women who think. His words don't mention you by name, but his eyes do. The baker's wife no longer invites you to knead beside her. Your mother says only, be careful. Not kind, not sympathetic, just careful. As if your mouth is a blade and your tongue a loaded trap. You realize then that gossip is more dangerous than truth. Truth waits for evidence. Gossip needs only repetition. It requires no proof, no witness, just mouths willing to move. And women's mouths, they say, are the devil's favorite instrument. But you know better. You remember being a girl, overhearing women whisper behind curtains in kitchens and fields. They didn't call it gossip. It was survival, warnings traded like herbs, truths tucked into murmurs. Now, when you speak, it is not survival. It is blasphemy. Not because of what you said, but because you said it. Men may shout about taxes and weather and bishops' cloaks. Their words are reasoning. Your words, the same words, are meddling. When a man says the river floods, the council listens. When you say it, it's venom. So you bite your tongue. You rehearse your greetings. You apologize before you speak and after, just in case. You smile when you want to frown. You shrink. But gossip does not shrink with you. It grows. It mutates. One afternoon at the market, you overhear two men joking. One says, "Careful. She'll hex the salt if you cross her." They laugh. But beneath the laughter, you hear fear. It doesn't matter that you've healed fevers, that you've fed the hungry, that you've kept your own house standing through storms of silence. What matters is that you notice too much. That you let one thought slip. Gossip has teeth. It nips at your ankles first, playful, almost harmless. But you know what comes next. Because you remember old Marta, burned when you were 12. You remember how the whispers built like a storm, how neighbors crossed themselves when she passed, how they nodded when the woodpile grew in the square. You thought then it was about witchcraft. Now you know better. The burnings don't begin with spells. They begin with sentences. And you, without meaning to, have just spoken one. She lives on the edge of the village, in a crooked cottage hidden behind thorn hedges. You were told never to go there. They say her hands are stained, her words don't end in amen. They say she knows too much. You go anyway. You go because your sister won't stop bleeding and the priest offers only prayers. You go because the midwife doesn't ask who your father is before she helps. You go because when she places her palm on your sister's forehead, she doesn't flinch. She just works. She gives your sister a tea that smells of bark and bitterness. The bleeding slows. Your sister sleeps. For the first time in days, so do you. You return the next morning with bread as thanks. She doesn't thank you back. Instead, she presses a sprig of something sharp into your hand. For cramps, she says, boil it with wine, not water. You want to ask what it is. You want to ask everything. So you do. And she answers. And just like that, you begin learning. You learn the names of plants, their uses, their dangers. You learn how to set a bone with honey-soaked thread. How to whisper to a laboring woman so she believes she can survive the night. How to tell when a child's fever will break and when it won't. Knowledge pours into you, not from parchment, but from hands, from practice, from quiet songs sung in rhythm with boiling water. Knowledge that feels alive. Knowledge not permitted, not sanctioned, not holy, but real. And dangerous. Because the church tolerates her only when her cures fail. When a baby is stillborn, when a child dies of fever, then the whispers start. She meddled with mysteries meant for God. No one accuses her when she saves lives. Only when she cannot. You see it happen. A girl too young, too small, screams for hours before silence swallows her. The father curses. The priest nods. The midwife has done something wrong. No proof. No evidence. Just fear. Just blame. The women still come, cloaked in secrecy, desperate, ashamed. They bring coins at night, bread wrapped in cloth, silent thanks. But by day they look away. Pretend they never knocked on her door. You realize then what the midwife meant when she told you? The difference between a healer and a witch is who's asking the question. The same root that soothes pain can be called poison. The same hands that deliver life can be tied behind your back. The same knowledge that saves is the knowledge that condemns. So you learn not only the herbs but the art of hiding them. You bury them under chicken coops, memorize doses instead of writing them, disguise remedies as luck or coincidence. You speak in metaphors. You let people believe healing is accident, prayer, chance. Because women like you are never allowed to be brilliant, only useful, or burned. Sometimes in the quiet of her cottage, the midwife looks at you for a long time. Her eyes are sharp, knowing. You have the kind of mind they'll fear, she says. So you must learn twice, once how to heal, once how to hide. You nod. You understand. And as you crush fennel into powder and whisper her rhymes under your breath, you realize that you are carrying something older than scripture, older than sermons. A thread of knowledge passed woman to woman, hidden under centuries of ash and accusation. A thread that, if ever pulled too far into the light, could strangle you. But you cannot let it go. Because now, when you look at the world, you don't only see silence and suffering. You see cures. You see patterns. You see power. And you begin to think, maybe that is why they fear you most. It begins, as always, with gratitude. A child burns with fever. His mother wails, the priest mutters prayers, the neighbors shake their heads. God's will, they say. You don't accept that. You crush bark into powder, steep it in wine, and press it to the boy's lips. His breathing steadies by dawn. By noon, his color returns. The family thanks you. They call you blessed. But blessings turn quickly into questions. How did you know which herb to use? Where did you learn such things? You smile, you lie, your grandmother taught you, a dream came, a whisper in prayer. They nod, relieved. Because healing is allowed only if they can explain it away. But explanations don't last. Another woman brings her child. A merchant's wife. You give a tincture. The fever breaks. She tells everyone. Soon the line at your door grows longer. Sore throats, broken bones, childbirth too slow or too fast. You help where you can, and people whisper your name with reverence. But reverence in the wrong mouth becomes suspicion. The priest stops you after Mass. His smile is sharp. His words careful. The people say you have gifts. You bow your head, pretend humility. He leans closer. Remember, only God heals. You are but an instrument. Do not forget your place. You nod. You say the words he wants. But inside you know the truth. The herbs worked because you knew them. The fevers broke because you acted when prayer did not. And you know too that knowledge is not divine. It is learned. It is earned. And it is yours. That knowledge becomes your heresy. When the baker's child survives a cough that has already buried 3 others, whispers sharpen. Why her child? Why not mine? Jealousy disguises itself as piety. Perhaps she meddled. Perhaps she bargained. Perhaps she chooses who lives and who dies. The gratitude fades. Fear grows. One evening, a neighbor storms into your cottage. His wife died giving birth. You try to help, but the bleeding was too much, the child too large. He screams that you killed her, that you poisoned her with your herbs, that you stole her soul. His grief becomes your guilt. His rage becomes the village's suspicion. The priest seizes the moment. His sermon rings through the stone chapel. Beware the women who act as if they know better than God. Healing that does not come from prayer is deception. And deception comes from the devil. The people nod. They cross themselves. They glance at you. You try to shrink again, to bow, to say nothing. But the questions still cling to you, sharper than any blade. Why does bread rise in your oven when others fail? Why do your children not starve? Why does the sick sometimes walk again after your touch? The answers are simple. Or knowledge, memory. But simple answers are never safe ones. The midwife warned you, the more you heal, the more dangerous you become. To them, every cure is proof of sorcery. You understand now. Healing is permitted only if it fails often enough to keep men in charge. Too much success and suddenly you are unnatural. Too much knowledge and suddenly you are unholy. The same act that makes you savior one day makes you heretic the next. That night, you sit by candlelight, your hands trembling over a sprig of rosemary. You whisper to yourself, "This is medicine, not magic." But the walls do not care. The church does not care. The world does not care. All they will see is a woman who dared to heal when she should have prayed. And you realize with a shiver, the firewood is already being stacked. The summons arrives like a thunderclap. A messenger in fine livery at your door, his horse stamping impatiently. He speaks your name aloud and suddenly the whole village hears it. You are not accused, yet. You are requested. By the Queen. The ride to court feels unreal. You clutch your shawl against the wind, watching the fields blur into forests, the forests into stone roads. You've never left the village except for market days. Now you are being carried into the heart of power, into a world of velvet sleeves, jeweled goblets, and voices that decide wars while you still smell of herbs and smoke. The palace is colder than the convent, grander than the chapel, sharper than any man's blade. Its walls are tall enough to make you forget the sky. You walk past guards who do not look at you, courtiers who glance at you like an insect in their wine. And then you see her, the Queen. Draped in silk, her crown pressing her brow, her hands jeweled but steady. Her eyes, tired, sharp, and knowing, fix on you. She does not smile. She does not frown. She studies you as if you were not a guest, not a peasant, not even a woman, but something else entirely. You bow low, unsure how deep is deep enough. She gestures for you to rise. Her voice is soft, almost kind. They say you have a gift. You freeze. You hear the trap inside the compliment. A gift is holy if she names it so. A curse if she chooses otherwise. You murmur, "I only serve your grace." She tilts her head. Serve whom? God. The people? Yourself. The question lingers in the chamber, heavy as stone. You do not answer because there is no safe answer. Instead, she asks you to sit. She tells the room to leave. And suddenly, it is just you and her. No courtiers, no priests, no men eager to accuse. Just the Queen and the silence between you. She studies your hands. The scars, the calluses, the ink stains that never fully faded. These are not the hands of a lady, she says, nor of a witch. These are the hands of a worker, of a survivor. Your breath catches. She knows. Not everything, not the secrets buried in your nights, but enough. She knows the stories, the whispers, the accusations that have followed you here. And yet, she does not condemn. Instead, she asked, about herbs, about fevers, about births. Her words are careful, veiled as curiosity, but you recognize it. Hunger. The same hunger you carried in the convent library, the same hunger you whispered to your child at night. She wants knowledge, and she wants it from you. You tell her little, just enough to answer without inviting suspicion. But even in your hesitation, she sees it. She knows you know more than you say. When the audience ends, she touches your shoulder lightly. Not a command, not a blessing. A warning. They will love you, she whispers, until they fear you. Be careful. You leave the palace with your pulse roaring in your ears. The villagers stare when you return, their suspicion sharpened by your absence, their gossip thickened by the sight of the queen's messenger. The queen has seen you. The court knows your name. That is no blessing. It is a spotlight. And spotlights blind as easily as they illuminate. That night, lying awake beside William's snore, you replay her gaze. That look of recognition, of kinship, of caution. You realize she is not your enemy, but she is not your savior either. Because a queen survives the same way you do, not by truth but by silence. Not by power but by playing the game. And she has just reminded you, the game is now yours to play too. At first, the palace feels like another world. The air heavy with incense and perfumes, the ceilings painted with saints and myths, the floors polished so bright you see your own shadow looking back at you. But shadows can't be trusted here. They shift with every torch, every whisper. The queen's gaze still lingers in your mind, her warning circling like a hawk. They will love you until they fear you. You see it happen quickly. A courtier smiles when you suggest a better method for storing grain. 2 days later, the steward repeats it word for word as if it were his own. He is praised. You are ignored. A noble woman leans close when you whisper about the bishop's inconsistencies in his sermons. That same evening, she tells the hall in veiled phrases that she alone has noticed the flaw. They call her perceptive. You are invisible. It is a familiar theft, but here it is sharper, more dangerous. Because in the village, stolen words were gossip. Here, stolen words are politics. And in court, politics kills more swiftly than fever. Soon, rumors slither through the corridors. At first, they are harmless. She is clever, sharper than most. Then more pointed, she reads too much. She speaks too directly. And finally, more venomous, she bewitches with her voice. Men lose themselves when she talks. You feel the shift when you walk into a room. Conversations falter. Eyes slide away. Smiles stretch too thin. The air changes like a storm waiting to break. The queen notices. One evening, as you pour her wine, she murmurs under her breath, "They've started." She doesn't explain. She doesn't need to. You already know. The same gift that saved lives in the village now brands you as dangerous in the palace. Not because it changed, but because you are visible. And a visible woman who knows too much is always one whisper away from ruin. You remember Marta, the midwife, and her words, the difference between healer and witch is who's asking the question. In court, the question is no longer about herbs. It is about power. And power never forgives those who wield it without permission. One afternoon, a lord corners you in a corridor. His smile oily, his tone mocking. You think yourself wise, don't you? Perhaps you should save your wisdom for the queen's ears. Not everyone likes clever women wandering the halls. You bow your head, hide your fury in silence. He leaves smug. You stay trembling, not with fear but with recognition. This is how it begins. Not with firewood, not with rope, but with whispers seated carefully in the right ears. By night, you hear your name in fragments. Ambitious, dangerous, too proud. They will not accuse you openly. Not yet. They will let the rumors spread until they no longer sound like rumors but truth. Until one day, a bishop or a steward, or even the queen herself will repeat them as if they've always been fact. And when that day comes, it will not matter what you've done or not done. The story will already be written. You lie awake that night, staring at the rafters above your borrowed bedchamber. You realize the truth with a cold clarity. You don't need to be guilty. You only need to be inconvenient. And you are. It comes not in fire or chains but in parchment. The seal is crimson pressed into wax. A guard delivers it to your chamber with eyes that won't meet yours. You break it with trembling fingers, though you already know. The words inside are written in the church's hand. You are summoned for questioning. Questioning. You know what it means. It is not curiosity. It is not conversation. It is accusation dressed in ritual. A trial before the trial. The chamber is cold when you arrive. Stone walls, narrow windows, a single table. 3 men sit behind it. A bishop, a magistrate, a court scribe. Their robes heavy with authority, their faces carved into masks of suspicion. They do not greet you. They let silence weigh on you until your breath feels too loud. Then the bishop speaks. We have heard troubling reports. Reports. Not facts. Not proof. Reports. You bow your head, say nothing. He lists them one by one. You speak too freely. You heal with methods not sanctioned by the church. You question scripture. You encourage others to question. You speak to the queen too often, too privately. The words stack like stones on your chest. Each one familiar. Each one sharpened by rumor until it cuts as clean as a blade. You try to answer carefully. You say you only serve. You say you only repeat what elders taught you. You say your healing is nothing but herbs, as any village woman might use. The magistrate interrupts. Yet no one else's herbs work as yours do. The bishop adds, and no one else speaks as you do. Too quick, too sharp, too dangerous. They do not want explanations. They want a confession, a bending of the knee, a silence disguised as repentance. You remember Marta's words, the queen's warning, the way gossip shifts into doctrine. You know the script. If you resist, you are defiant. If you speak, you are guilty. If you are silent, they will write your silence as admission. So you choose the only weapon left to you, restraint. You lower your eyes. You soften your voice. I am but a servant. If I have erred, it was ignorance, not malice. The bishop studies you, searching for a crack in the disguise. The scribe scratches ink onto parchment, sealing your words into history but not your meaning. They will twist it however they wish. After hours of circling questions, they dismiss you. No verdict. No punishment, yet. Just a shadow over your name. When you step back into the palace hall, the whispers have already changed. You are no longer clever, no longer curious. You are dangerous, officially dangerous. Some women glance at you with pity. Some men smirk. One courtier mutters as you pass, it's only a matter of time. That night, you sit by the window staring at the crucifix across the courtyard. You wonder how many women have sat where you sit now, summoned, questioned, rewritten. How many bent their necks before the blade, not because they were guilty, but because they were too much. You do not cry. You do not scream. You only think quietly, carefully, so carefully because now even your thoughts feel like contraband. And you realize, the first accusation is not about you. It is about preparing everyone else. To soften the ground. To plant suspicion. To make it easier when they decide your fate. They have begun to build your pyre. Not with wood. Not yet. With words. Once you dreamed of being heard. Now you realize survival means being forgotten. The summons has marked you. Every step through the palace feels heavier, watched. Your name tastes sour in the mouths of courtiers. Yet in whispers, in shadows, in corners away from the bishop's eye, you are still sought. A noble woman pulls you aside in the garden. Her child is weak, thin, always coughing. She cannot risk calling the official physician, who demands coin she cannot spare. She begs you. You hesitate, then slip her a remedy folded into cloth. Her gratitude burns hotter than her fear. A steward pauses by you during supper, his voice low. The grain stores are failing. Rats, mold, corruption. If the truth reaches the queen, his head may fall. He asks your advice, desperate. You give it in a single sentence, wrapped in caution. Days later, you hear the problem has been miraculously solved. He doesn't mention you again. He never will. But he knows. You are invisible in daylight. But in shadows, your influence stretches like roots under soil. It is dangerous. It is intoxicating. Each whisper you give becomes a tool, a weapon, a seed planted in the mind of someone who will claim it as their own. They never thank you openly. They never speak of you in public. But their eyes meet yours across the hall with something between fear and reverence. The court begins to change in subtle ways. Grain stored more wisely. Taxes spoken of more fairly. A child survives when no one thought she would. None of it carries your name. But you feel your fingerprints pressed into the world, invisible and undeniable. Still, the danger grows. Because every invisible act makes you more visible in rumor. She has a way of making men do as she says. She can twist a problem into clarity no bishop could find. She speaks less, but when she does, people listen. And in a world where men cannot bear to think themselves influenced, what they cannot name becomes what they fear. One evening, as candles gutter in the queen's chamber, she calls you closer. Her face is lined, her voice brittle with exhaustion. You are cleverer than most of them, she admits. But clever women in court do not last. They become stories, warnings. You ask her why she allows you to stay. Her eyes sharpen. Because I want to see how long you can survive. It is not protection. It is not friendship. It is recognition, the cruelest kind. You leave her chamber with fire in your veins and ice in your chest. You realize influence is not a crown to wear, not a throne to claim. It is a shadow to inhabit. It cannot be seen, only felt. And shadows can stretch, but they cannot stay still. So you learn a new art. Not just silence, but the silence that invites others to fill it with their own fears. Not just retreat, but the retreat that makes others lean closer. Not just whispers, but whispers timed so perfectly they become echoes no one can trace back to you. You become less a woman, more a rumor wearing flesh. And rumors, cannot be executed. Not cleanly. Not completely. But you also know this. Rumors are only safe as long as no one dares to prove them true. And you are starting to wonder if survival alone is enough. It begins with a death. A nobleman collapses at a feast, wine staining his lips red as blood. The hall erupts in panic. Men shouting, women screaming, servants rushing. You are there, near enough to see the foam at his mouth, the pallor of his skin. Poison, you think instantly. You smell it in the sourness of his last breath. But no one looks to the cup. They look to you. It does not matter that you did not pour the wine. It does not matter that you did not even speak to him. It matters only that you have been whispered about for months. Clever. Sure. Dangerous. A woman with influence too wide, knowledge too deep. The accusation needs no evidence. Only timing. The next morning, the bishop announces that an investigation is underway. By afternoon, it is no longer an investigation. It is a verdict waiting for fire. They search your chambers. They find herbs dried and bundled. They find scraps of parchment with notes, your hidden thoughts, your questions. They find remedies for fever, diagrams of stars, fragments of arguments you once dared to write. They call them spells, curses, proof of heresy. The steward who once begged your counsel does not speak for you. The noblewoman whose child you saved looks away. Even the queen keeps her face carved into stone, her gaze distant, her warning fulfilled. You are led into the great hall, chains heavy on your wrists, the air thick with judgment. The magistrate reads the charges: witchcraft, heresy, sedition. Each word falls like a hammer. You want to laugh, to cry, to scream. Instead, you stand silent, because you understand now. The trial is not for truth. It is for theater. The witnesses speak. A neighbor says you always bake bread too perfectly. A servant swears he heard you mutter in strange tongues, Latin you think bitterly, the very language priests praise. A lord claims you once looked at him too directly, as though piercing his soul. None of it is true. All of it is true enough. When they ask for your defense, you feel the weight of every woman who stood here before you. Marta burned in the square. The novice who dreamed of Mary's voice. The healer drowned for saving too many lives. You know the script. No defense will save you. Still you speak. Not loudly. Not pleading. Calm, steady, deliberate. You say you healed because children were dying. You studied because ignorance is not holy. You spoke because silence would have been a sin. You tell them you are not a witch, not a heretic, not a seductress. You are only what God made you, a mind that thinks. The hall stirs. Some eyes flicker, uncertain. Others harden, terrified. The bishop raises his hand, silencing the room. And that, he says, is precisely the problem. The verdict is already written. Guilty. You are sentenced not yet to death, but to confinement. They will decide your fate in due time. You know what that means? More whispers, more fear, more wood piled in the square. That night in your cell, you sit beneath the same kind of crucifix that once watched you in the convent. You remember its gaze on your first day. You wonder if it pities you now or if it simply watches, indifferent, as women burn again and again in his name. You do not cry. You do not beg. You only think. And even now, in chains, you feel it, that stubborn ember inside you. Because even if they kill you, you know the truth. Your voice has already escaped you. It has already taken root in others. And no pyre, no noose, no silence can stop what has already begun. You do not remember the exact moment they lead you to the square. Perhaps because your body walks while your mind has already gone elsewhere. The crowd gathers like vultures, their murmurs rising and falling like waves. Some faces are curious, some triumphant, some afraid. A few, just a few, carry sorrow. The pyre is stacked high, wood sharpened at the edges as if eager to taste flame. You are bound to it, rope scratching your skin, smoke already thick in your throat. A priest lifts his hand, chanting verses meant to sanctify your death. His words twist the air, but you barely hear them. What you hear are the whispers. Women clutching children closer. Girls staring wide-eyed. Men shifting uncomfortably, unable to meet your gaze. Whispers that are not prayers, not curses, but questions. Was she truly dangerous? Or only too wise? You breathe deeply, letting the smoke fill you. You think of Marta's herbs, of the novice's dream, of the queen's warning, of every word you tucked into margins and folded into secrecy. You think of your child, listening in the dark, whispering questions into the air because you told them once that asking was not a sin. The fire catches. It licks at the wood, then at your dress, then at your skin. Pain sharpens, but so does clarity. You realize they cannot kill what you are. They can burn the body. They can erase the records. They can carve your name into history as heretic, witch, seductress, danger. But they cannot touch the thought, because thoughts spread like embers. One lands here, in the mind of a girl who will grow into defiance. Another there, in the heart of a mother who will teach her daughter to hide questions and lullabies. Another in the silence of a queen who has learned too well what power costs. The flames roar higher. You scream once, not because you regret, but because your body is still flesh. But even as it breaks, you feel something break free. You do not vanish. You scatter. Later, the chronicles will reduce you to a single line. Executed for heresy. They will not mention the cures, the arguments, the truths you carried. They will not say you were right. They will say you were trouble. Too clever, too proud, too much. But stories survive where chronicles fail. Years later, a girl will hear your name whispered in the kitchen as her mother kneads bread. She will be told you asked too many questions. She will be warned not to repeat your mistakes. And when she lies awake at night, she will think, but maybe they were not mistakes at all. Your legacy is not in books, not in statues, not in titles. It is in murmurs. In glances exchanged when a priest misquotes scripture. In letters written backward in the margins of psalms. In the moment a girl dares to laugh too loudly or ask too boldly or think too clearly. They thought the fire was an ending. They were wrong. Fire is never an ending. Fire spreads. And so you endure. Not as saint, not as queen, not even as witch. You endure as possibility. As the reminder that a woman's mind is not property, not silence, not ash. It is flame. And flame, once lit, cannot be contained.